I have a couple of legendary campaigns and a round of powerfuls and pinnacles under my belt. Witch Queen has been out for a few days, and I think I'm pretty comfortable giving some first impressions, starting as usual with the campaign. Spoilers for literally everything in the expansion. Please do not watch this if you have not done the campaign yet. My first run of the campaign was with a 3-person team on opening day. My second run was solo on a Void Hunter, mainly using Taraba as my weapon of choice. I was surprised to hear that the solo was considerably easier than being in a team, but I can absolutely confirm that to be the case. The 3-player scaling is really shown off in the legendary campaign. Now, was solo a walk in the park? Absolutely not. Plenty of times where I had to buckle down and focus up, but it was not as hard as I was anticipating based on feedback that I was seeing. This has been the best Destiny campaign that Bungie has put out, and I don't think it's even remotely close. It's so good that Bungie, with permission, quoted me on a Destiny Twitter ad that they're using for marketing. We've had some stinker campaigns for sure, but we've also had some good ones. I would argue the good ones, stuff like Taken King, Forsaken comes to mind, were good partly because they had pretty interesting story elements and cutscenes. The rest of the campaigns just kind of sit in the middle, not really being offensive in any way, but aren't remarkable either. Taken King and Forsaken were good campaigns, but in terms of the gameplay experience, the part where you're shooting stuff and using abilities, I don't really remember being challenged in any sort of significant way outside of maybe the final missions, maybe. That is because I've always played the campaign with friends, and the campaign never really felt balanced for teams of 3. It felt like it was balanced around solo play. I distinctly remember being very, very underwhelmed by the original D2 campaign because the fight with Gaul was a complete joke in a team of 3, whereas solo, it could range from incredibly difficult because you didn't grind any extra power to also a complete joke. The legendary campaign did not really require any outside power grinding. My team did none. We could just keep doing mission after mission because we were always at level thanks to the double loot drops and supplied upgrade modules so that we could just, infuse and keep moving. The tuning was pretty spot on. I think the contest mod on the missions was about 15 levels, which is enough to make things actually feel threatening, but not so much so that you couldn't frag out. Each final encounter felt appropriately difficult. You couldn't waste res tokens, and death was swift if someone stayed dead for too long. It made the story elements and the story beats feel so much more significant because you weren't just breezing right through it. But most importantly, this extra challenge made the campaign that much more enjoyable for me because it was the first time that I was actually looking forward to the gameplay portion of a campaign. I was looking forward to what kind of boss fight was going to come next, culminating in a fantastic and outrageous final boss experience in Savathûn. I love PvE when I actually have to care about the gameplay, when I have to care about staying alive and playing well. It's why campaigns have always been an afterthought to me in terms of the gameplay. I get more excited for what kind of story is being told than the gameplay itself. This time, we got both. The Lucent Brood fighting the Hive with light was occasionally pretty tough, but also a lot of fun. I think people feel like the Hunter Acolyte is the most lethal of the 3 because of Blade Barrage hitting so hard, but I would argue that the Sentinel Knight is actually the most lethal. The Sentinel doesn't feel like it would be the most powerful or the most lethal, but rather the most tanky, but I was getting annihilated by those shield throws, and the suppressing grenade that they throw is deadly. Either way, they're all really fun enemies to fight against. What was there to not like about the campaign? Stupidly long campaign missions, great story, amazing boss encounters, and something that I think went under the radar was the lack of fluff. No having to derail your gameplay by going to do public events or lost sectors or go grind out a bunch of kills on a thing or grinding for more levels because you weren't high enough. We've moved on from the go kill all of the main villains, minions, and lieutenants and nightmares arc of stories that have been in the past 3 expansions for some real story-driven campaign missions. We've finally hit parts of the story where we're getting answers and we're making real progress instead of just lots and lots of setup. We're finally facing off against Savathun. We're finally doing the things that the game has been building to all this time. We're finally learning, again, the things we've wanted to know so much about and being surprised by plot elements along the way. Something that I was a bit surprised by was the killing of Savathun in the main story. Maybe in quotes, killing. Her ghost is still out there, so anything is possible. I think if Bungie was still doing the sort of campaigns that they had been doing for the past 3 years, I would have been a bit more annoyed at this, but the Savathun encounter was so well done, especially on Legendary, and the reveals were so well done and satisfying that I didn't really mind at all. The Savathun encounter was just so good, especially in a team, limited revives, high stakes. It's probably the closest feeling you'll have to doing a raid boss without being in the raid. The final mission is a couple of mechanics and maybe an extra boss fight away from being a dungeon. I feel like, in combination with the legendary difficulty, that Bungie really did her final fight justice, and that usually was my main problem with previous final bosses. They were complete pushovers in gameplay, and I feel like for a villain death to be good, there needs to be both story and gameplay satisfaction. This time, we got both. Something else that I was concerned with was just not knowing where the hell the story was gonna go if Savathun was killed off, because I'm just not in tune with the lore. And getting a setup and reveal to what is an even greater villain was awesome to see, but it's not like this villain came completely out of nowhere either. The witness reveal was also really satisfying because you just don't really see villains like that in Destiny in terms of their physical appearance. Most of the villains we have in Destiny are pretty distinct in their features and have their, own physical traits that we're used to experiencing. The Witness is the first enemy that feels the most humanoid compared to any other villain, and is just so radically different looking from what you might expect a normal Destiny villain to look like. And I mean that in a good way. It's unsettling. It almost doesn't even feel like a Destiny villain or a character that belongs in the Destiny universe, and I thought that was just really cool. Another thing that I really appreciated from the characters like Mara, Ikora, was them just completely admitting that they don't know something or don't know what to do about something. In a lot of story media, it can feel like everyone always knows what to do or how to do something, or they stumble into something. And I just appreciated that there were certain things happening in the story where Ikora was just like, dude, I don't know what's going on. That even the top level characters and playmakers can be just as clueless as the rest of us makes them feel more relatable. Getting to see a moment of weakness in Marasov in the post campaign was neat because she just seems so infallible all of the time, never showing any level of weakness. The Throne World destination is gorgeous, another massively huge play space, but something I will say is that it feels empty. Like there aren't nearly as many enemies patrolling around in the space compared to what I feel like that number should be. Love the Push the Payload public event, doesn't take super long to do, which is good. And yet again, Team Lost Sector continues to improve something that no one was ever expecting improvements to, pushing them towards micro strike territory. It has not gone unnoticed. The new strikes are also pretty solid as well, very much looking forward to seeing them in Grandmaster mode, but I've only played Lightblade twice and Birthplace once, so I don't have a ton of feedback on them at this moment. In terms of the post-campaign content, thus far we have Marasov turning Savathun's worm into a gun and being a little freaked out about the Witness, the Wellspring activity, and the evidence board. Considering this is a first impressions video, we can maybe talk about these at length down the road, but the Wellspring activity is, pretty fun as far as your 6-player match-made activities go. Nothing too mind-blowing here, pretty much your standard Destiny affair. I feel like there are some vibes out there that Bungie just dropped their bomb via the campaign and the rest of the world is feeling a little bit light. That could also be because we just had 4 seasons worth of content removed from the game, plus a destination. It's something I haven't engaged with enough just yet, but I can totally see what people are saying. Also, am I nuts or does normal Wellspring just not drop weapons? Can we get a buff on the drop rate here, please? That'd be good, because we need a bunch of these guns for the evidence board, and they're just not dropping. I think that's about it for the campaign-related things. Yeah, again, best campaign. It's not close in my eyes. Bungie has their work cut out for them with Lightfall. Andrew Hops, the campaign lead for Witch Queen, has just been confirmed as the lead for Lightfall, which is very inspiring. But to everyone on the team who worked on the campaign in any way, huge congrats. It was phenomenal. Let's move on. Weapon crafting. As we have learned, it's a relatively simple process to craft a gun. But day over day, I've been hearing more complaints about the crafting process due to high cost for enhanced perks. Full disclosure, I have not really messed with weapon crafting that much, as most of my time has been spent doing campaign stuff, leveling, and making content. So my first impression is really, I don't have one other than I like some of the guns. But as soon as I heard some people were stockpiling completed deep sight weapons in their vaults as a means to hold more currency, I figured there was probably something going on. So I'm under the assumption that people were anticipating a bit more freedom when it came to swapping perks around, maybe allowing them to clear space in their vaults because they have a gun that can be transformed into any other version of that gun. Maybe anticipating an unlock system where you buy a perk and then you're free to swap it whenever you want. I think this was my initial interpretation of the system in some previews, and I was definitely wrong there. This is not the case, and as a result, if you want to be able to swap as often as you like, you really need a lot of material to make that happen. I don't think the intent was that people were going to be swapping perks every other run of a strike. And I do think a lot of people are trying to rush to the enhanced perks right off the bat, which is causing even more issues on top of low Ascendant alloy drops. My guess is that Bungie did not anticipate people wanting to shift their weapons that often, especially with the low maximum capacity of advanced crafting materials. This is something I would like to follow up on in the coming weeks as I get a bit more experience with it. I am personally not anticipating wanting to shift the perks on my guns that often, and I have a feeling people are under duress right now because this is a brand new feature and they want to be constantly messing with it and experimenting. As time goes on, people will have more and more materials at their disposal, and the desire to be constantly shifting perks on weapons will likely drop as people figure out what they actually want to use. For now, I would say don't really invest too hard into the enhanced traits until you really figure out what you want to be using on the gun. It looks like Bungie wants enhanced traits to be a sort of end game level thing based on the cost. Whether or not this current iteration of crafting is the best way to go about it is still up for debate. Speaking of crafting, Osteo Striga, the exotic SMG, is really strong. There's no other way to say it. It is incredibly potent. But in my opinion, it is boringly potent. Like, it's so strong that I'm bored. Because it just kills everything. If there's a big group of enemies, it's just over. And I'm not even talking about the gun with the catalyst. With the catalyst, forget it. I want to experiment more with this gun outside of regular activities, strikes, wellspring, etc. I want to see how it does in higher level stuff, but yeah. Speaking of crafting, still Glaives. During my time in the Legend campaign with the team, when we first got access to Glaives, I thought that they were very underwhelming in terms of their damage output. It's not really that much better than any other special when it comes to using the projectile. The melee damage is fine, although sometimes the glaive will combo very smoothly into all of its attacks, and then sometimes it'll just not. After getting access to more of the seasonal artifact and after leveling the glaive, you start to see a bit more of its power. Void Hunters can throw on Suppressing Glaive and be invisible with like 99% uptime because of Stylish Executioner. So yeah, when we have the ability to permanently suppress a target by poking it with a stick, it doesn't really matter how good the weapon is because the infinite suppression kind of makes it good. If you could use both suppressing glaive and suppressing darkness at the same time, forget it. My concern is for when these mods go away and glaives are just left being glaives. Close range weaponry is very difficult to use in high-end content like Master or GM Nightfalls. We do have the shield, yes, but I'm just not sold at the moment on the glaive in the long term. This season, the seasonal artifact's all about glaives and void, so let's enjoy it. But when season 17 rolls around, I'm going to be a little skeptical for the time being. I'm even skeptical of them this season. Leveling in Witch Queen has been a pretty easy process as well with how many reward sites there are, and given that the raid is at most 1530, that leaves plenty of time to make sure you're ready to go, even if your RNG is terrible. The Legendary campaign really helps boost the leveling process, which is part of the reason why leveling has not felt that bad at all, at least for me. I was able to get my Titan to around the 1540s, which is my first character. I really only just did my Powerfuls and Pinnacles and moved on. After transferring my guns to my Hunter, said Hunter ended the campaign at 1540. After a round of Powerfuls and Pinnacles, I expect my Warlock to be close to 1550 at the end of the campaign. Powerful cap. End of campaign. That's really nice. Void 3.0 I think has been a pretty big success as well in PvE. I have not had any time to really experiment with builds on any of the classes just yet, nor have I even touched the seasonal artifact, but even just using them in their raw forms, just throwing on aspects and fragments, Titan and Hunter have felt pretty good. I'm very happy with Titan and how the shield has been pushed into a lot of their gameplay. It was something that I really felt was missing from their kit for years outside of their super. Hunter felt pretty good as well, although I think that's mainly Quiver talking. I used Quiver throughout the campaign and it is really, really solid now. Orpheus given that third shot, it is no joke in PvE anymore. Stylish Executioner is pretty fun, but having to wait 2 to 3 seconds every time you want to melee something did make things a little slow during my solo adventures. I have not played on my Warlock just yet, but my wife Danielle played Voidlock during the campaign and felt things were really, really strong there. I cannot imagine I'm going to have a bad time with Warlock. PvP. Haven't touched it, but I know things are not the greatest right now because most of my PvP YouTuber and streamer friends are not that stoked at what is happening right now. Apparently there's a lot of overshielded Titans, permanently invisible Hunters, and Warlocks with high ability uptime combined with low population issues. This expansion was very much a PvE expansion yet again, and I think PvPers got 2 maps in Vostok and Eternity to come back, neither of which I think they were very stoked about. That and a messy Void 3.0 Crucible experience, which will likely be tuned over the coming months. I'm going to defer to the PvP lords on that whole situation. Gambit. I was interested in how the changes to Gambit turned out. And while things did get a little more interesting, the moment I died to yet another Eyes of Tomorrow rocket from across the map along with 2 of my teammates, losing 30 some odd motes in the process and thus losing the game on the spot, was the moment that any interest I had in continuing to try out Gambit died. Sorry, Bungie. Granted, I was playing in the regular playlist, not the freelance playlist, so perhaps I'll give this another visit. In conclusion, the campaign of the Witch Queen was absolutely fantastic, and I think it is worth the price of admission alone. Void 3.0 in PvE has been a blast, especially this season with all of the Void-focused mods. But I'll be keeping an eye on weapon crafting and glaives as the season rolls out. People are still leveling and all that, and are maybe not experimenting a ton with weapon crafting. I know that's been my issue. There's also the poor Wellspring weapon drop rates, but that problem is much more easily solved. Definitely still some things to flesh out a bit more. I need to game on my Warlock, get into the mods a little bit more and all that. But so far, I've been pretty happy with how the Witch Queen has rolled out thus far. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you next time.